What's up, guys? If you're not subscribed, please subscribe. Also, please smash that like button on the video and enjoy the show.
Like I've told people when my buddy John's he was a Navy SEAL, passed away. It was in business setting, right? But I was his partner in Iraq, right? We were in some crazy situations, and I knew what he was about, and he knew what I was about. And like losing him when his wife was 9 months pregnant and having to knock on our door, this really had a profound impact on me.
You laid out that story.
Yeah, I
by
mean,
the
he was
way,
just
last
young,
time
you
were
know.
here.
He's
Yeah.
32 years old, but it was kind of like when you're running with those circles in business, it's like you know what people are really about, and I think that's just one facet of like the whole conversation is the unique bond that people have. I'm closer with some of the people than I'd ever would be with my family because once you get out of the house, you're kind of calling your parents. You're just, you know, it's your formative years, but as an adult, you're kind of a little bit more distant. So yeah, it's just, war, unfortunately, should be unfortunately should be a last result. I agree with you 100% on that, but at times it's going to be necessary, you know, and when those times come, you know, you got to make these moral decisions, and those lines get blurred quite a bit.
Hold on
yeah.
one sec. Let's just pause and go to the bathroom so this asshole outside can
Yeah,
turn his fucking car off. We'll be
douchebag.
right back. I want to touch on that point. All right, we're back. The soundproofing in here, we spent a lot of time on. It came out really, really good. But like, if there's an ambulance right outside the window or someone with their fucking car going off like that, there's really nothing I can do. So we just got to pause on that. But we're talking about this whole concept of, you know, going down the rabbit hole of being in the middle of either, war, or no war at all in any cases. And you just touched on it at the very end of that last point where you were saying like, yeah, it is a last resort, but it's a resort. It's something that does have to be used. I understand some of the anger of the, say, isolationist crowd right now when they look at all the money, though, that is going to wars where we don't necessarily have our boots on the ground, right? It's going into Ukraine. It's going into fucking Israel, right? And it's all these bills are being passed for billions of dollars.
Hundreds of billions.
Right.
Like that.
While people here, you know, the middle class is dwindling. There's a greater and greater wealth gap. There's people who are struggling to have families and pay their bills. And I understand when they see all this money going out and they're like, what the fuck is this for? So how do you curb maybe the righteous anger of people like that to say, yes, on these cases, you got a point. Like we probably shouldn't be spending this much money and we need to figure out a way at peace. But like in the future, if some shit went down or something and we had to get involved, you guys got to be ready to support that if it's really at that last resort type situation.
Well, I think it comes down to politics, unfortunately, which I don't ever like to talk about. Like I said, you know, my goal is to unify people and things like that. However, I think people really, need to be doing a better job when it comes to looking at the representatives. You know, the government works for us. That's the model. Unfortunately, everybody, you know, in politics seems to have it backwards.
Yeah.
You know, we elect officials to run the country, and people need to be doing a little bit more due diligence, spending more time, because what happens in and I've been victim of it myself in the past as a young guy. If you go across the line, maybe those people don't represent your beliefs, your wants and needs. And if you just go straight down the line, maybe those people aren't as aligned with what your belief system is or the way that you want to see the country go. That's number one. I don't know, you know, is doing due diligence, actually taking the time to get out and vote, and especially local stuff. Like, you know, everyone's busy, man. There's some times where I haven't voted, you know, for local elections, and I don't even know who my representatives are in my state. That's important. But then you go up to the federal level, you know, one, we don't have good options. Look at the elections right now. You know, we're stuck with the same types of people. That one's a hard one for me to kind of weigh in on as far as what's the fix for that, to get better representatives for us to represent this country that would be more making better decisions. Because part of me is an isolationist in the sense of We're a nation of laws. We need to take care of the people in this country because we have a great country.
Sure.
When we're spending hundreds of billions of dollars on other causes, and that's why I'm trying to combat, raise awareness and destigmatize veterans' mental health, because the federal institutions that are supposed to be doing this are not doing a very good job. Therefore, we need private institutions or nonprofits to come in and firm that up. And it's out of necessity. It's not, they're just failing. The VA, they do some good things well. I try not to just slam on the VA, but if you talk to any veteran that's been through it, like myself, there's a lot of things. Why is that money, $100 billion goes over into Ukraine, another $100 billion, another one, Israel? You go across the board, that's an absurd amount of money that could be going here into our country to do better things. So it's a complex, situation when it comes to the solution. But I mean, it starts with, people being informed, doing due diligence, actually going out and vote, because a lot of people don't do that. I mean, I'd be very curious on what percentage of this country is actually taking the time to go out, to kind of weigh in. I don't know.
Yeah, I make sure I go do it. And there was one election. I talked about it on a podcast with John Lebecki back in episode 114. But there was one election I on purpose did not vote in, and he actually had a really good argument that changed my opinion on even that, like where that was like a protest, like not voting, because he had lived through something that you probably saw a little bit as well up close in some of your deployments. But he lived through like when the Iraqis got their voting rights back and what a big deal that was. And he's like, I don't give a fuck who you vote for. Go in and vote none of the above. And when he said that, he's like, there's nothing wrong with writing that in. And that's actually like what I've been doing. But I do think when it comes to local elections, it gets a little tough because, people, including myself, we do have lives. We got things to worry about and shit. I'd be lying if I told you I could name my fucking alderman. I don't even know what an alderman is. The way I look at that is, like, I go outside in Hoboken. The streets are clean. Every time I see a little problem, like I remember last fall, I started seeing on my walk on Sinatra Drive, there would be rats going across from one side of the cement towards the river by the trash. I was like, ooh, starting to get a lot. And the next thing I know, I don't know who the fuck did it. I don't know what politicians were responsible, but there was like a thing in Hoboken where you reported the rats or whatever, and they were gone. Like I literally haven't seen them since. I'm sure there's a few out there. But like when I see stuff like that, I'm like, okay, whoever the fuck is in charge right now, they're doing a good enough job. I don't know who it is. I'm not going to worry about it. That said, like if I went out there and shit was falling apart and there were problems, yes, I would probably take the time to learn who my people are and go vote for someone who could do a better job. So I think there's a balance there. But when it comes to our government and the people who are legislating at the top end, especially on a national level or at the top of the state level, like governors, stuff like that, I think you're right. There's a responsibility for most of us to try to take the time to at least know some basics on like what they're doing. And if there's an option on there that you think is best, that most closely aligns to what you think your priorities are, vote for them.
Yeah, I think, for me, I'm not an expert in the field, right? So I try not to kind of weigh in too much because if I don't have a solution, I don't like to complain about the issue. But there's several issues that are things that everybody, even that's listening, can do and make changes, right? Like one, man, you're getting me on the hot button topics, but
there's nothing hot button about this. You're fine.
One is, if you look, the things that concern me is the slow burn. Did you ever see that 1984 interview with the, was it KGB? I can't remember his name.
Yeah.
I should know his name.
I always forget his goddamn name.
I've watched it several times.
We will beat America from the bottom and they will slap it or whatever the fuck he said.
That was kind of man, nailed it. And I think there's been, that strategy. One of my concerns is with is the education system. I think we touched on it a little bit with colleges is a good example.
Yeah,
I think colleges should be a place where young men and women coming out of high school learn to sit across the table and become critical thinkers for themselves, not being indoctrinated to some nonsense to kind of pollute their minds. They need to be free thinkers, man. Free thinking and critical thinking is a skill set that everybody can work on that's listening to this. And that drives, better candidates and things like that, because you're thinking for yourself on whatever the topics are in the world and potential solutions for them as well, because you're thinking outside the box.
Thank you for watching the video, guys. If you haven't already subscribed, please smash that subscribe button and check out this clip's full podcast episode by clicking here or in the description below.